This 2023-2024 NBA season-long player props edition of the Propcast on the Sports Gambling Podcast Network is brought to you by Underdog Fantasy. Underdog has just added Pick'em Scorchers where you can win 100x. That's right, turn $5 into 500 in one game. Plus, every Sunday they're giving away 100,000. Use promo code SGPN at Underdog Fantasy for a 100% deposit bonus of up to $500. We're also brought to you by Game Time. Download the Game Time app, create an account, and use promo code CFBX for $20 off of your first purchase. We're also brought to you by Hall of Fame Bets, the sports betting research platform for parlays, player props, and game lines. Download the Hall of Fame Bets app or visit HOFBets.com. Use promo code SGPN to get 50% off your first month and start making smarter bets today. And we're also brought to you by the NFL Second Chance Survivor Contest at the Sports Gambling Podcast Network, presented by Corey Pinkston and Barking Dog Properties. The contest starts this weekend, and it's free to enter. Just go to sportsgamblingpodcast.com/survivor. Welcome, everyone, to the Propcast, part of the Sports Gambling Podcast Network. It is Thursday, October the 19th, currently 1:04 on the East Coast. And you could probably tell by my voice I'm a little excited, just a little excited. It's the first Propcast of the 2023-2024 NBA season. We're about, 4 days away from the first game tipping off on Tuesday. But hey, we're going to get into some season-long player props here for the NBA season. And joining me, I got my guy here with me. We're going to be here all season long for the Propcast for the NBA. It's Chris B. Cap. And Chris, we're ever so close from my man. We're that close away from the NBA season. How you feeling, my man?
We are, super excited, man. As you can tell by the big old smile on my face, look like a kid in the candy store. And I just, my parents told me I could buy whatever it is that I want, and I get an unlimited amount. We're that close, I'm excited, man. Excited to be on the Propcast with you this year. Like you said, it's time to buckle up, time to lock in. We've done our homework, and hopefully we can give out, some winners based on the information that we found. So, like I said, excited to be here, man. Can't wait to talk NBA hoops with you all season. Let's get it started,
Yeah, at least for this episode, we're going to get into some season-long stuff. And I really haven't paid attention to it, Chris. I'm not sure if you have, but I think this might be an extensive menu this season as far as season-long player props. And it's really on DraftKings right now where I've kind of dug it up. I know FanDuel and some of the other places have it as well. But they've put out some great markets as far as season-long player props go. So we're going to go through some players that we like for points per game. There are some projections out there on these books for their over-under for points per game, rebounds per game, assists per game. I think there's also a three-point market as well. And then we're going to get into some of the leaders that we like for this upcoming season, as far as, who's going to lead the league in points, rebounds, assists, three-pointers made per game, and all that fun stuff. So hopefully we can put some money in the pockets of our listeners here. If you haven't already subscribed to the NBA Gambling Podcast, now is a great time to do so, because we're going to be on the Propcast for the NBA feed on the YouTube channel here. So again, definitely tap in with us all season long, and then we'll start working through the schedule. But at least the plan is for myself and Chris to get on the Propcast at least 2-3 times a week to get into the player props for the games that start during the regular season, and then we'll go from there. But at least for this season, or at least for today, we're gonna get into some season long stuff, like I mentioned. Chris, I was trying to find some, I guess, a description or what the kind of the rules are on some of the season long stuff for the NBA season. I know for the NFL that we did, it's pretty cut and dry. That, hey, player plays it down, it counts for the season. But I'm not sure I don't know if you've seen anything, Chris, as far as if there's some type of stipulation that for these bets that we're going to give out here today, that a player has to play in X amount of games. Have you seen anything like that, or is it just, hey, if he plays one game, the bet counts? It's action. Have you seen anything about that?
So a couple articles I read, say that, and I'll just read the quote: to be eligible for like some of the actual awards. So to be eligible for most valuable player, defensive player of the year, most improved player of the year, all defensive teams, players must play 20
60.
plus minutes in at least
Yeah.
65 regular season games,
Right.
or at least 62 minutes if they are, suffering a season long injury or something like that. So that's the most I could come up with, So
Okay.
hopefully the guys that we end up taking, get to that threshold, and
Yeah.
we can cash out on them.
Yeah, 100%. So, um, yeah, I know they came up with a new rule because of the whole, the load management and things like that. But I think I'm not in disagreement with the rule. I do like it. I mean, 20 minutes per game, it doesn't seem like a lot, especially in a 48-minute game where some of these superstar play well above 30 minutes per night. Obviously depending on team, there's some coaches that like their star players to be out there anywhere from 30 to 35 minutes. Some coaches push their players a little bit longer. Obviously, that determines of how the game is going. Obviously, if you're up by 30 points heading into the fourth quarter, that's 99% sure that your star players are going to be sitting in that fourth quarter. But Chris, let's just dive right into it, my man. We'll get into the first category here. Again, you can find these on various books. I referenced it on DraftKings. And we'll start with the threshold of there's a whole list of players with projections of how many points per game that they're going to average for the upcoming season. So we'll give you about 2 to 3 for each category. And like I mentioned, we'll get into the scoring leader, rebound leader, assist leader, threes leader for the upcoming season. So, Chris, I'll let you lead it off, man. What stuck out to you as far as points per game here for the upcoming season?
Man, so I'm gonna start off on a scary foot. If I'm taking an under right off the
All
top, we're
right.
just gonna go straight under. And it's my guy, man, Bron. It's I'm a diehard Laker fan. For people who don't know, love LeBron James, love the Lakers. You look at Bron, he averaged 28.9 points per game, so almost 29 points per game last season. However, you look at this Laker team, they made trades to acquire scoring when they traded for guys like D'Angelo Russell. Rui Hachimura came over in the middle of the season as well as that trade deadline expired. And those guys contributed a ton. Then there was the emergence of Austin Reeves, AR-15, who got himself a bag over the offseason as well. And we saw him average 17 points per game in the last 2 months as well. The three of those guys combined, have averaged 42 points per game after the All-Star break throughout the regular season. So from February to the end of the season, the end of May, these guys were really helping out a lot. And what we saw was Bron's scoring drop. Bron was averaging 33.8 points per game in the month of January, and that was when Anthony Davis was hurt before the trade. So he didn't have a lot of help. We saw those points per game come down, off to 25 per game in the month of February and 20 points per game in the month of March because he received so much help. And the Lakers did a really excellent job. Shout out to Rob Pelinka. The guy did a really excellent job of re-signing those guys and making things a little bit easier for LeBron because we know that the guy's in his 21st season. I mean, the longevity is absolutely, it's absolutely remarkable. But I do think that those other guys should step up, take the onus off LeBron, so that he can be in better shape. Because the goal of the season for the Lakers will be championship or bust because they have LeBron James, because they have Anthony Davis. So in his 21st season, I could only look at Bron to go under. This number is 27 and 27.2. So that's another thing for the listeners as well. It's not on the dot. It's not 27 points. It's 27.2 points per game. I did like LeBron to go under. Also, last thing I'll mention, Anthony Davis. There's been talks and rumblings for the last couple years that he's supposed to be the guy that's going to take over the reins and be the best player on this team. And Coach Ham has said that throughout his pressers for the Lakers so far this season, that he wants him to be more assertive. He also wants him to shoot about 6 threes per game. So we should see a lot more scoring for other players, and LeBron scoring should be impacted. Which in his eyes, he probably doesn't want to go out there and have to average 28 points per game. So I do think LeBron under 27.2 points per game. It is a minus 130. Don't like that I'm laying so much juice, but that does insinuate that LeBron probably does go under, especially if we can get a healthy Anthony Davis this season.
Yeah, I mean, obviously, Anthony Davis probably comes out every season and says, I want to play in all 82 games. But I think as an NBA fan, but also you as a Lakers fan, anytime you see him even fall down to the court, you're holding your breath for Anthony Davis. But I don't disagree with this play about LeBron. For everything that you mentioned there, is that especially with this team here, um, you mentioned that Rob Pelinka did a great job of not only re-signing the guys that were on this roster last season, but also adding some, other players like Gabe Vincent that they brought up for the Miami Heat. But there's options for now scoring, right? And I think there was a stretch last season where LeBron was scoring like 30 plus every single game when AD was out of the lineup. But when healthy, I think LeBron becomes a rebounder. He becomes a facilitator. And you let guys like Anthony Davis, you let guys like, even Austin Reeves, who had a great season last year, Rui Hachimura coming off of the bench, D'Lo you mentioned. So there's guys that can put the ball in the basket for you. Obviously, when you need LeBron to take over, he definitely can do that. But I think, yeah, this number is a little bit of a stretch. I expect him to be around 25 points per game, averaging 7 boards, 8 boards, and 7-8 assists again per game. But like you mentioned, I think this is going to be Anthony Davis's team as far as the scoring responsibility does go. And eventually, when LeBron does retire, Anthony Davis is going to be the face of this franchise for the Los Angeles Lakers. All right, Chris, before I get into my first player prop here, let me tell everyone about SGPN Second Chance Survivor and the NFL Gambling Podcast Review contest. If you've already been knocked out of your NFL Survivor, don't worry. We at SGPN got you covered with the SGPN Second Chance Survivor, presented by Corey Pinkston and Barking Dog Properties. $3,000 is up for grabs. Winner takes all. It starts this weekend for NFL Week 7, so sign up now. sportsgamblingpodcast.com/survivor. Again, that's sportsgamblingpodcast.com/survivor. We're also brought to you by the NFL Gambling Podcast. The guys over at NFL Gambling Podcast are doing a review contest. Leave an Apple Podcast review with your favorite touchdown-related bet for this weekend. Biggest winner gets a $50 SGPN gift card to the merch store. Make sure to include your YouTube username in the review and also the odds for the touchdown for the touchdown prop bet, so we can contact you if you are the winner. And we're also brought to you by Underdog Fantasy. Underdog Fantasy is a way to play alongside your favorite football team all season long. Underdog has just introduced Scorchers. Go 5 for 5 and pick 'em Scorchers and enjoy a spicy 100x payout. And for a limited time, the Underdog is extending their first deposit bonus of up to $500. 100,000 Sundays continue on Underdog Fantasy. 10 lucky players will win $10,000 each. So watch along, make your picks, and maybe make a little cash over on Underdog's mobile app or website, underdogfantasy.com. And when you sign up with promo code SGPN, Underdog will double your first deposit of up to $500. Again, that's Underdog Fantasy using promo code SGPN. All right, Chris, let me get into my first scoring prop here, and I'm going to go over to you started with the under. I'll start with the under here as well. I'm going to go over to the Milwaukee Bucks. I'm looking at Dame. Dame to go under his points projection of 27 and a half right now is what I see for him. And we talk about the Milwaukee Bucks roster, right? Obviously, they already had Giannis. It has Chris Middleton on there. And you add another superstar player like Damian Lillard, or all-star player like Damian Lillard. But again, it's the fact that this is still Giannis's team. And I think Giannis is going to be on a revenge tour this season after what kind of transpired in the first round for them against the Miami Heat. And we know during the regular season, the Milwaukee Bucks are one of the better teams that do go over their win total. But I feel like this number is a little bit of a stretch for Damian Lillard, because you take a look at what happened in Portland after CJ McCollum left. I mean, Dame was pretty much the guy. He was getting all the shot volume. He had the ultimate green light. But I think that's going to change here in Milwaukee, where he doesn't have to take on the entire scoring responsibility. You still have Chris Middleton. You still have Giannis on this team. The depth around them is going to be good as well. Obviously, Brook Lopez is still there. You still have Bobby Portis there as well. You still have shooters around these players. So I'm thinking that for Damian Lillard, that the shot volume is going to decrease for him a little bit. I think that's going to be something in the same range where I think that LeBron is going to be, and where he's going to be around that 25, 26 points per game. I still think Giannis, this offense starts and stops with Giannis. And I think that Giannis is probably still going to average 29, 30 points per game this upcoming season. I think for Lillard coming over to the Milwaukee Bucks, I think he's going to have to take that seat back in a role that he hasn't really been in because he's always been that number one guy in Portland. But you still have Chris Middleton on this team. He's still a guy that can get you 17, anywhere from 17 to 20 points per night. There's always only one basketball. And I think that the Milwaukee Bucks, like I mentioned earlier, that if their team is up by 20, 25, 30 points, they're going to be sitting their stars. And, Lillard has battled some injuries over the past couple seasons. And again, maybe that's by choice to just sit him because maybe you're trying to get better draft picks over there in Portland. But I think that at least he might just have to take a step back, and that shot volume might not be there for Damian Lillard. So I'm taking the under 27.5 points per game here for Dame this upcoming season with the Bucks here, Chris.
Yeah, this I felt like this number was pretty close to where it should be, but I couldn't play the over. Could he go out and average 30? Absolutely, he could. But there's too many other factors that you got to take into consideration, like the blowouts, right? Like we expect this offense to get clicking. They still have the length, down low to be able to protect the rim with Brook Lopez and Giannis and Bobby Portis. So I think it still be a really good defense. Also, you mentioned the one thing that kind of stuck out to me, and that was Chris Middleton. Chris Middleton is a guy who saw his points per game drop 5. He dropped from 20 2 years ago to only 15 last year, and big part was due to injury. They couldn't play him in back-to-backs. We know that he was in and out of the lineup, but according to what I'm hearing, it sounds like he's going to be pretty healthy and ready to go at the beginning of the season, although he hasn't been partaking in a lot of these preseason games. But just 33 games played last year and 19 started. So I do expect his production to go up. And then you also bring in a guy like Malik Beasley who can fill it up from 3. So it might not just be Dame that's out there doing all the scoring. So I would lean towards the under on this one. Definitely not take the over.
Yeah. All right, Chris, take us over to your next one, man. What do you got?
All right, so player prop number 2, I got a couple narrative ones in him. The first one I'm gonna go with is actually I'm gonna go with your boy. I'm gonna go Jalen Green. Let's go to Houston and talk about Jalen Green. So Jalen Green to average. So this one is over on DraftKings as well, but instead of his points per game, the number that you can get, which I'm not sure what his number is, I just went straight to average 24 points per game in the regular season. Jalen Green's a plus 180 to do so. You look at Jalen Green, 3rd year in the league. He's probably in the best situation entering this season. He has a new competent head coach and Ime Udoka who comes over, legitimate point guard, and Fred VanVleet who comes over from Toronto as well. And just to add to the narrative, Green, I was listening to an interview actually earlier this morning. Green said that he thinks it's time for him to kind of elevate his game, take it to superstar, take it to all-star type status. Yeah. And I think he does so. In his first season, he averaged 17 points per game. We saw a jump of 5 points per game all the way to 22 last season. So we're really just asking them to average 2 more points per game in a better situation overall. Like I said, better coach, better point guard. The opportunity will be there, I think. And I think we see his game improve just based on the workouts that we saw, based on him getting stronger. And he talked a lot about diversifying what his offseason kind of looked like so that he could take bits and pieces from other players. And, he was out in LA getting a lot of run in with some of those superstars. And to me, he just seems like he's locked in, if he wants to take his game to the next level. So I think Jalen Green could jump these 2 points that he needs. And I love that I can get it at plus 180. So Jalen Green to average 24 points is a plus 180 on DraftKings.
I love that. The number under that points per game for him was at 22.7. It's a little bit juiced. I believe I saw it at minus 125 over on DraftKings. But I could sit here and talk about hours and hours about the Rockets and how now it's transformed from, Steven Silas not really having an identity on offense to now you bringing in a competent head coach like Ime Udoka. And I know they brought in Fred VanVleet, but I think it's more for him to be that guy in the locker room and be a leader to the young guys. And I think this offense is going to go through Jalen Green and Şengün for the Rockets, right? And I think that you take a look at the first 2 seasons for Jalen Green, he averaged 17.3 points in this rookie season, and then last year, 76 games, 22.1. So maybe we're not going to see a 5 points per game increase like he had from year 1 to year 2, but we're just asking him to be 3-4 points better here, 3 points better per game for Jalen Green. I think this is a big year for Jalen Green in year 3. And you mentioned all the off court stuff during the off season where he was working his tail off with the workouts and working with some of the superstars in the league as well. So I'm really high on Jalen Green. I'm hoping that he has a big season for the Houston Rockets because again, he's a bucket man. He can shoot the basketball. He can get to the basket as will at will as well. So I think it's going to be a big year for Jalen Green. So I'm not going to talk you off of Jalen Green averaging at least 24 points per game for this upcoming season. For the next one, let me go over to. I I don't think there's much of a handicap here, Chris, because this guy probably has the ultimate green light over there in Washington. Jordan Poole over 24 and a half, 24.7 points. I mean, look, are we going to be shocked if this guy's getting up 30 shots per game? I don't think so because we saw when he was with the Golden State Warriors coming in with that second unit, or even times when he was starting, he's gonna get the shots up, whether that's from the 3-point line or whether that's him getting to the basket or the free throw line. I think that him going over to the Washington Wizards now, where you don't have KP there anymore, you don't have Bradley Beal. Those were the two guys that were your top scoring leaders for the past several seasons over there in Washington. But now you bring in Jordan Poole here, who's going to be the ultimate chucker, whether it's from the 3-point line, 30 feet away, or getting to the basket. So I wouldn't be surprised if Jordan Poole is averaging 26, 27 points per game here. But I thought this number was really conservative for Jordan Poole, for him pretty much being the guy on offense. I know it's going to be him, Kyle Kuzma, in combination of the young guys, but I think that, again, with the ultimate green light that he's going to have, 24.7 just seemed a little conservative for Jordan Poole and what he is capable of doing.
Yeah, I'm gonna talk about Jordan Poole a little bit later, but you took a lot of my notes, and it's not even really notes. This is just what we kind of expect based on situation. So 20, yeah, I think that'll be an easy number. We saw last night, if anybody had a chance to tune in, they were actually in New York at the Garden last night, and Jordan Poole had 41 points. There were highlights, of I think I want to say it was Corey Kispert or Danny Avdia.
It was Avdia.
Avdia kind of waving his hands like, "Hey, I'm open," and Jordan Poole's letting that thing go. He's shooting it left and right, man. And you see Avdia kind of put his head down, so he might be in for a long season, with Jordan Poole out there in that ultra green light that he has.
I saw that this morning. I was like, "Oh, this is gonna be a long season for some of those guys over there on the offensive side for the Wizards." Did you have any more points per game props out there?
Yeah, let's talk one more. Go ahead. I can talk we can talk all day. You have to cut me off and tell me to be quiet. But Trae Young, I like Trae Young in this spot as well.
That's my third one as well.
Points per game sitting at 26.1, minus 115 on DK. Back-to-back season, Trae's averaged at least 26.1, 26.2 last season, and three of his last four seasons as well. You look at his numbers last season. This was kind of surprised me when I started doing the digging. Last season we saw his field goal percentage drop from 46 2 years ago to 43, which was actually the second worst in his career. Mm-hmm. And his 3-point percentage dropped from 38.2 to 33.5, and he still cashed the number. And in a season where I kind of feel like Trae has a lot to prove, he has a lot of people that he wants to shut up. He's referenced it on his podcast and, in all these other social media platforms that he's kind of talked about, just feeling disrespected. I think he comes out with a vengeance. You look at this team, and they don't have a ton of scoring options, in my opinion, that are going to take away shots from Trae. And he's the point guard, so he's going to shoot the ball when he wants to. It's a quick, easy handicap for me. I think, and John Collins is gone, and that's not necessarily going to mean more points for him, but it could mean that they need to score more points. So I do think that Trae's been locked in over the course of the offseason, has a lot to prove, and I would only play him over this 26.1 points per game over on DK.
I think there was an injury concern last season with Trae Young there as well. I want to say it was batting a shoulder injury last season as well. And again, there's a lot of off the court stuff that was happening within that Hawks organization, where it was between him and Nate McMillan and the whole John Collins fiasco there as well. But like you mentioned, I think for this Hawks team now, they have the roster, they have the head coach now, and I think that when you bring in Quinn Snyder, I think he's going to take over as that Donovan Mitchell role, will kind of just be that scorer. And I know you have DeJounte Murray, where he's going to be the guy that's probably going to be getting the assists for this team. He's going to be setting up the offense, and you have Trae Young playing off of the ball. But like you mentioned, this was one of the ones that the ones that stuck out to me as well. This was one of the first ones that I wrote down. So I'm not going to regurgitate everything that Chris just said there. So Trae Young over 26.1 points per game for this upcoming season. All right, Chris, before we get over to rebounds per game for the upcoming season, let me tell everyone about Game Time. You probably want to get out there for opening night for your respective NBA teams, or you still want to get out to a football game, whether it's at the collegiate level or the NFL, or hockey season's underway as well. Or maybe there's a comedy show or the theater that's near you and you want to get out to do to those events. Let Game Time help you out and make the process of buying those tickets very, very easy. All you got to do is download the Game Time app, and they have some great features on their app as well. Like I mentioned, they have flash deals and last-minute tickets are always available. They're easy to find and buy tickets for every kind of event in your area. Like I mentioned, not just sporting events. But the best thing I love about their app is when you actually go in to buy those tickets, you actually get an image of your seat view before you actually purchase those tickets. So you know exactly what you're going to get when you get to that respective venue. Forget planning months in advance. Game Time has deals on tickets right up to the day of the event and get exclusive flash deals on tickets for football, basketball, baseball, concerts, comedy, theater, and much more. The Game Time guarantee means you'll always get the best price, and you find tickets in the same section and row for less at another venue or another outlet. Game Time will credit you 110% of the difference. That's how confident they are in their prices. Like I mentioned, you get images of your seat before you buy them, so you know exactly what to expect when you arrive. Buy tickets in a matter of seconds, 2 taps, and you're all set. Also, the best part, those tickets go right into that app. You don't have to wait in the mailbox for the tickets to be mailed to you or in your email box. No, they're right there in the app or right there on the phone. So download the Game Time app, create an account, and use promo code CFBX for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. Again, create an account, redeem code CFBX for $20 off. Download Game Time today. Last minute tickets, lowest price guaranteed. And we're also brought to you by Hall of Fame Bets. Win bigger by betting smarter this NFL season with Hall of Fame Bets, a sports betting analytics platform for parlays, player props, and game lines. Research every NFL, NBA, MLB, and soccer bets with historical stats and data. Enter any parlay idea into Hall of Fame Bets' revolutionary parlay optimizer tool to get hit rates broken down by leg, as well as expected probability for the entire parlay. Sort our players by hit rate for any bet to learn which players are hot and which picks have value. So stop betting in the dark and join over 30,000 users with Hall of Fame Bets to craft a more intelligent, data-driven parlay. Download the Hall of Fame Bets app or visit HOFBets.com and use promo code SGPN to get 50% off your first month. Start researching, start winning with Hall of Fame Bets. All right, Chris, let's get over to the rebounds per game market here. What do you got for this market?
So rebounds, if I actually got another under that I want to talk about, and I didn't like a lot of these rebound props. They kind of feel like the numbers were kind of spot on. Yeah. But the one that did kind of stick out to me was DeAndre Ayton, and I like his under. Is the number's 10.5, is minus 115 on DK, so you're not paying too much juice. And I'm just kind of thinking about the situation for Ayton. So he did average 10.5 rebounds, which I don't think I realized that Ayton averaged 10.5 rebounds, but a couple times before. But the number, 10.5 is what the number set at. He's only averaged 10.5 2 times out of his first 5 seasons in the league. So this number, I think, should actually drop, and I think he should probably average around 10, maybe a little less than 10. You look at last season in Phoenix, he averaged just 15.6 rebound chances per game, which was barely in the top 20. So that means he converted a lot of the opportunities that he did get to actually get the rebounds. He was actually one of only 2 players. Him and Julius Randle were the only players in the league to average double-digit rebounds that averaged less than 16 rebound chances. Because remember, I said he only averaged 15.6. Yeah. So a change of scenery, I think, is the biggest piece as well, So I'll finish with that. From Phoenix to Portland, that's gonna look a lot different for Ayton,
Yeah.
And we know that this is the biggest part. Rebounding is about defense, right? Yeah. You can't get a rebound if you don't play defense.
Yeah.
So think about these numbers. Portland defensively last year, 28th defensive rating. The year before, 27th. So they haven't played defense in Portland in a long time. They probably shouldn't even call it Portland. They should probably call it Portland and just keep the D off, right? So, but you look at the Suns. They actually ranked 7th in defensive rating last year, which is why you're able to get those rebound chances. I went back and looked at Nurkic last year because, of course, he's not there. He's going to they kind of swap spots. Nurkic led this team in rebounding with just 9.1 per game due to the lack of the defense. And then there's the opportunity for them to get blown out, which you probably should anticipate. The Blazers team total set at 28.5 right now, which is the 3rd fewest in the league. So the books are anticipating this team to win a lot of games. Aiden may not play the same amount of minutes that we saw him in the last game. So I like Aiden to go under his 10.5. We just need him to average 10.1, 10.3. So if he gets 9.7 or something like that, then, we cash this pretty easily. I will be playing this one as well.
Yeah, I'm high on Aiton this season just because, like you mentioned, the change of scenery. I just think that he wasn't going to be utilized the way, or he wasn't going to get the touches he was going to get he wanted to in Phoenix, just because, again, you have Devin Booker there, you had Mikal Bridges at the time. And I think that, again, we read about the rift that he had with Coach Monty Williams as well, and him just probably not wanting to be there. And again, it wasn't going to get any better for him this season when you had Devin Booker, Kevin Durant, and now Bradley Beal there. But I'm I thought if this number was around 10.1 or 10.2, something close to 10, I would have came in on the over, but I think 10.5 was of a big stretch for me. I did consider taking the over for DeAndre Ayton, but I think that 10.5 is a stretch here. But I really do like Ayton to have a big season for the Portland Trail Blazers. I did get down on him for most improved player of the year award. I think that's a possibility for DeAndre Ayton, just because you're going from a team that you were underutilized, possibly now going to a team that, I know they have Scoot Henderson and Anthony Simons and those guys, but I think it was the first preseason game there, Chris, where he just absolutely just dunked the ball, and we didn't see that a lot from DeAndre Ayton in the Phoenix. So I think that this might be a bigger year than a lot of people are expecting for Ayton. But yeah, I was considering this, but I think you kind of talked me off of not taking the over there. So no significant disagreement for me on this one. Yeah, I agreed with you. There was not a lot I liked for this rebounds per game. I'll throw out Domantas Sabonis out there, 12.2 rebounds. I mean, I'll take the over on that. Again, when we talk about Sabonis, and when you're looking at some of these, especially for the rebounding categories, you want to look at guys that also can get you offensive rebounds as well, right? And I think Domantas Sabonis and guys like Steven Adams and Nikola Jokic, those are guys that can also get offensive rebounds for you as well. But if you kind of just take a look at what Sabonis has done in the course of his career, he's really been right at this number ever since the 2019-2020 season when he was with the Pacers. 12.4, 12, 12.1, 12.3. Last season, he had 12.3. So that number is right there. I think you get, again, 12.3, 12.4 in that realm of possibility. It's a very fine margin, but I want to give out something, at least for the rebounding prop market. So again, it's a little bit chalky, obviously with Sabonis. So I'm going to go with the over there on Sabonis at 12.2 rebounds per game. Any thoughts on Sabonis for this upcoming year?
Yeah, so initially I didn't like I didn't like the number for Sabonis, just because I know that JaVale McGee's not going to change it. He's not going to change things too much instead of pot up too much because of where he is in his career. But it's just another big that they have down there. But the reason why I didn't play the under is because, and what kind of talked me off of that is because of the way that they lost last year. We saw Sabonis numbers drop. I'm not a big fan of betting against players when it's something clear that they need to work on. And I think for Sabonis, it's his toughness. His rebounds went down, his points went down. We saw Draymond kind of punk him in that series. And shout out to Steve Kerr, kind of create a game plan to make him not that effective. So I think that Sabonis probably took that serious. And if he did, that could lead to him, just dominating again from the rebound perspective. But there's also the thought that, Coach Mike Brown wants his guys to kind of crash to be able to help Sabonis, because we know that one of the Kings' problems last year, while they love to score the ball and they love to get out in transition, they didn't play with a lot of size. So the other guys may be, coming down to kind of crash, the Harrison Barnes, the Trey Lyles of the world. Those guys may be coming down to kind of help Sabonis as well. So no real thought on this one, but I could easily see him going over. Really wouldn't surprise me if he averaged 13 rebounds, honestly.
Yeah. I think, again, this market was a little difficult, especially for rebounding, because there's so many opportunities for other players to grab rebounds as well. So at least I want to throw one out there. All right, Chris, let's get over to assists per game. I'll leave this one off. And I think, again, we're both high on Trae Young this upcoming season. I took Trae Young over 10 assists. I know DeJounte Murray is there for this Atlanta Hawks team, but I think that Trae Young is a guy we've seen him do it throughout his career, where the assists are going to be there for him. You take a look at the course of his career. I'm trying to pull up the exact numbers here for Trae Young's assists per game, but last year, It was a down year like we talked about earlier with the points per game, but he still averaged 10.2 assists per game. And he's been hovering around getting close to 10 all throughout his career. In his rookie year, he had 8.1, but since then, 9.3, 9.4, 9.7. He had 10.2 last year, even with DeJounte Murray there. So I think that, Quinn Snyder will be able to figure out how Trae Young and DeJounte Murray are going to play with each other. But I think the assists are still going to be there. And we've seen with this Atlanta Hawks team that they like to throw lobs, especially when you have a guy like Clint Capella or Onyeka Okongwu out there, the guys that can go out there and dunk the ball. They added Sadiq Bey at the trade deadline last year, a guy that can knock down the three-point shot. You still have Bogdanovich coming off of the bench. So, you have guys that can fill the basket, and Trae Young and both DeJounte Murray can, rack up those assists as well. So I think for Trae Young, I also do like him. I know we'll talk about this a little bit later for, assist leader for the entire league, but I'm really high on Trae Young, like we talked about for the points per game. I think the assists are going to be there for him as well here, Chris.
Yeah, just so people make sure people understand, like we like his points, we like his assists as well. I couldn't talk you off his assists. The thing with Trae Young is his usage is always going to be so high. So that's what I wanted to check real quick. 31.3 last year, which is actually when you think about taking, just to filter this just a tad bit, you take those two out. That means Trae Young was 6th in the league last year when it comes to usage, and that was only behind Luka, Ja, Dame, Tatum, and SGA. So absolutely, this guy's going to have the ball in his hands so much, and we know what he does for that offense. The other thing I think to make sure to mention is Coach Quinn Snyder, like you said as well. Snyder, even when he was in Utah and he had Donovan Mitchell, he had Rudy Gobert, he still never was known for his defense. But Utah Jazz could really score some points back then. So I think that we kind of see that again, and I'm pretty sure that was some of the wrath that he had with Coach Nate McMillan was the effort on the defensive end. So now that Trae is free from that situation, I would only be able to look towards his overs at all together, whether we're talking about points or assists.
All right, Chris, what do you like for assists per game here?
So assists per game for me, I really like the new guy. The new guy on the block is Tyus Jones to average 7 assists.
That's my second one. Yeah.
Yeah, to average 7 assists for the regular season, it's actually a minus 105. I looked at that number. That's actually on Bet365. If you have access to that sports book. New situation for him. I think we anticipate to see his minutes spike this season as well. Just kind of a play on his situation. He averaged 5.2 assists last season in just 24 minutes per game, and we expect that number. We expect both of those numbers to go up. You think about Poole, and we talked about the ultra green light that he has. We know Kuzma can get a little trigger happy as well, shooting the ball. I think Tyus Jones could average close to 8 assists. Maybe 7.5, 7.7 assists per game. So give me Tyus Jones to average 7 assists for the regular season this year.
Yeah, everything you mentioned, right, is it's the situation that he's in, right? His responsibility is there to set up the offense and get the ball to guys like Kyle Kuzma and Jordan Poole, and he's able to rack up those assists. So I think during the regular season, Chris, I think you and I have to keep an eye on his number and what his assist number is coming out at, because I think the market will eventually correct. But I think early on in the season, when some of these guys are in new situations, I think that's when we really got to pounce on these player props and take advantage before the market does correct himself. So I think we got to remember Tyus Jones when we do talk about daily, player props for the regular season when games do start. But yeah, this was one I wrote down as well. Everything that you mentioned, so I'm not going to regurgitate everything. So Tyus Jones, Chris mentioned on Bet365, it's at 7. It's at 7.1 over on DraftKings. But again, I think that this is definitely a player that can, at minimum, I think will have at least 7.5 assists per game. Wouldn't be surprised if he's in that again. They're up at 8.5, maybe even more, just because of the situation that he is in with Washington. Any other ones you do like for assists per game here, Chris?
Yeah, so my second one, if I'm going with the chalk, man, I love this guy at point guard, and that's Tyrese Halliburton.
Ooh,
you can get Halliburton.
The amount of money we made last season taking Hallie's like double and assists last year. Oh my god,
absolutely, So you can get Halliburton to average 11 assists, at minus 105. He averaged. The thing I like about Hallie is, one, he got paid this offseason, so I think that they're. If you listen to the podcast, he was on Podcast P with Paul George and the crew. And I think based on what I heard, it sounds like he wants to, earn that money. And he loves that the ownership group for the Indiana Pacers believed in him that much. And he wants to live up to the hype. His assist number just keeps going up as well. 2 years ago, he averaged 9.6. Last year, 10.4. He also led the league, and this is what I always look at: potential assists last year. We know what that number was. It was close to 20, which was two potential assists more than what he averaged. More than anybody else last season. So I love that for Haliburton in the spot as well. The Pacers, we know that they play with pace. I looked at this, so they actually project this team to win four to five more games than they did last season. We know that starts and ends with Haliburton. Yeah. I look for him to be the point guard that dishing the rock left and right. Buddy Hield's still there, even though he wants to be traded. Because they couldn't restructure a deal. You add Bruce Brown, you add Obi Toppin, who's an alley-oop threat on every single play. The Pacers are going to be flying up and down the court, and we're going to be cashing tickets left and right with Haliburton. And I do think that he'll be able to average the 11 assists per game this year. Also, that you look at the other guys, James Harden last year, we're not sure what situation he's going to be in. Yeah. And Haliburton missed it by 0.3 assists per game last year to Harden. And who is the other guy, that I'm blanking on right now as far as assistant? Chris Paul. Chris Paul's in a new situation as well because, he's going to be in that backup / secondary role with the Golden State Warriors and have less usage. So I love Haliburton to not just lead the league in assists, but to average 11 this year,
Yeah, I have Hallie later for his assist leader per game for the regular season, but everything that you just mentioned. I mean, he's just that type of player, right? He can score the basketball. He can, rack up the assists. We saw it. I mean, we were blinking our eyes, and he had like 5-6 assists within that first quarter for the Indiana Pacers. And like you mentioned, Rick Carlisle offenses, they like to playing with pace. I know they added some defensive guys to kind of give him some length. And with Obi Toppin, Bruce Brown is a very versatile player as well. Either if he's going to be starting or coming off of the bench for the Pacers, I think that's a great pickup for them as well. So hopefully Haliburton is able to stay healthy this season because last year there was a stretch towards the end of the season where he was, he did get hurt, and I think that would kind of derail the Pacers at least trying to get into the play-in tournament. Last year, I think he only played 56 games out of the 82 last year. So hopefully he's able to get in that range of 65, 70 this year. And another guy that you could probably, put in the conversation of most improved player. And definitely a guy that could probably get his first first All-Star appearance for the Pacers upcoming season. One more I wanted to quickly discuss here with you, and I think that right now you mentioned James Harden and also Russell Westbrook that we've talked a lot about on the NBA Gambling Podcast, but let's just say that eventually that James Harden does end up with the Clippers. What do you think that does to the role of Russell Westbrook? Like, it's obviously he's really coming off of the bench, but you still expect him to be that high volume guy as far as filling up the stat sheet, because right now I see his number at 6.9 assists per game, where he did average last year 7.5 assists per game. And again, you can't fault Russell Westbrook just because of the way he plays a game of basketball. It's downhill. His motor is always on. But I think that was an interesting conversation just to have, just see what would happen to Russell Westbrook's role if James Harden eventually ended up with the Los Angeles Clippers.
I think that if that does happen, you send Westbrook to the bench, but I don't know if that's necessarily the worst scenario because they're missing a lot. I watched them play against the Denver Nuggets the other day, and man, their second unit just they can't really score the ball. I mean, I know you got Bones Highland out there, you got Terrence Mann, but they don't have like that solidified score outside of Norman Powell, right? So I think that just helps a lot. And you mentioned it, you're not going to change Westbrook's game. So I think he does continue to fill the stat sheet. It doesn't matter if you put the guy out there to play center, he's still going to play the game the same exact way. It's going to be with a lot of pace, downhill, trying to get to the rim, put pressure on the interior part of your defense so that he can penetrate and dish. So I would still look for him to be effective. And the other thing that we can't really quantify with numbers is just his sense of peace. If I think being with the Clippers, it's a lot less noise. It's a lot easier for him to live his life. He didn't have to buy a new house. He's still in LA where he was born and raised. Yeah. UCLA product. So I like Westbrook, in this spot. Whether they have to shift him to the bench, I think that you probably get a little more buy-in from Coach Ty Lue just because he enjoys the situation a lot more.
Yeah, I agree with everything that you just said there. So, yeah, we'll see. I think that for Westbrook, for the deal that he did sign with the Clippers, I think that, him coming off of the bench might just be the better situation for him if Harden does end up with the LA Clippers. I think it's a matter of when and not if for James Harden and the Clippers. All right, Chris, let's get over to the 3-point market here. This was a very limited menu that I did find here, but anything that stuck out to you as far as 3-pointers made per game?
3-pointers made per game, So just so people know, a lot of these are on FanDuel as well. FanDuel did have a 3-point market as well as DraftKings, but the one that kind of jumped out to me the most, was, of course you have like Steph Curry, and the odds for Steph are not going to be the greatest because he's the greatest shooter that we've ever seen. So even at a minus 150, you still can feel like you're getting a discount. And he does it in the regular season, the playoffs. He did it last night in the preseason when he hit the game winner against the Sacramento Kings. So I pivot off of Steph. LaMelo was an interesting one for me, because I know he likes to jack a lot. 18-1. Plus 1,800 on FanDuel, only plus 1,200 on DraftKings. So DraftKings put a little bit more respect on LaMelo. But LaMelo got paid this offseason. So hopefully that doesn't, backfire. But, because some guys do, they don't play as well. They don't show up as much when they get those major paydays. But Melo shot 10.5 threes per game last season, which was the third most, and made 4 threes per game, which was actually the fourth most. And he only played 36 games last year. So if he can play a full season, I do think that he can compete with the Steph Currys and the Klay Thompsons and the Damian Lillards of the world, who all shot and made just about or as many as threes as he took last season as well. I think Klay could start to slow down just a tad bit, just because it is another year for him. Although it is a contract year, I understand that. Steph and Dame are going to continue to be Steph and Dame, but at 18-1, I feel like it's at least worth a shot, and it's a contrarian look for Melo.
Yeah, I don't hate it. Like you mentioned, he's going to chuck up the ball as well. I know, they added Brandon Miller, but maybe more for defensive purposes. But you take a look at LaMelo's numbers. His field goal attempts per game from his rookie season have increased about an average of about 3.3 per year over year, right? 13.2. 16.7, he averaged 20 shots per game last season from the 3-point line. Those numbers drastically increased as well. He was averaging 11 attempts, close to 11 attempts last season, as far as from the 3-point line. So 50% of his shots were coming at least from the 3-point line. So again, when we talk about this type of market, you're looking for guys that obviously are going to shoot the volume there as well. And again, when you talk about LaMelo, I think that, that number is definitely going to be up there as well again this season for the upcoming year for the Charlotte Hornets and LaMelo Ball. It's difficult to handicap this market because we know it's pretty much going to be Steph Curry at the end of the day. I thought there was a little bit of value on a guy like Buddy Hield, 20-1. He's been in the top 5, top 3 over the past several years, and we know the type of shooter that he is. The situation with the Pacers, like we mentioned earlier in the episode, that he is looking for that trade. So maybe he goes to a team where he does get enough shot volume as well. But he's a guy that can knock it down. We've seen him do that all throughout his career, whether he was with the Kings or whether it's been with the Pacers. I think that number should still be there for him, even if he is still playing with the Pacers or if he does find another team. But at 20-1, I didn't hate it for Buddy Hield. The other one that kind of did stick out to me, I know we're talking a lot about him, is Jordan Poole at 30-1, just because, again,
my man, talk about it.
It's just, again, shot volume, right? Again, we know he can knock the 3-point shot down. He was coming off of the bench for the Golden State Warriors, in the early part of his career before he did get traded over to the Washington Wizards. But now him being that starting lineup, I think we're looking at LaMelo Ball type of numbers here, Chris, whether it's 20 attempts per game, or it's going to be at least half of those shots coming from the 3-point line for Jordan Poole. So at 20-1, I think that's a very difficult number to ignore for him to lead the league in 3-pointers made per game.
Hey, don't let him get hot. Don't let him see his first 2 go in, and don't let it be too bad he's sitting on the front row, because it's over. He might shoot 20 of them that game, right? But like you mentioned, volume gonna be there. Ultra green light under Coach Wes Unseld Jr. in Washington. He averaged 7.8 attempts last season, which actually ranks 16th. Now he gets his own team with a bunch of dudes that can't shoot the 3-point ball. Like, I'm not high on Washington at all, outside of watching Poole play. And of course Kyle Kuzma as well, and Tyus Jones, but a lot of those other guys, if they just don't move the needle for me. Like, Washington has been one of those organizations that's really struggled to kind of develop talent. But back to Poole, he averaged 2.5 makes last season on 33% shooting. which was an off year for him because he shot 35% the year before, back-to-back years before. So you actually can get him at plus 3,500 to be the three-point leader on FanDuel. So
there you go.
I think it's worth a stab. Something small.
Yeah, I agree. Anything else for 3-point market here before we move into the scoring leaders here, Chris?
No, I think that we covered it pretty well. I think,
All right, let's go reverse order here. Let's go assist leader for there. I think the top two guys right there are the odds-on favors. Is guys I can't really look past. Hallie at 2-1 and Trae Young at plus 260. I mean, we talked a lot about both Hallie and Trae Young on this episode. I think those guys are. I hate going chalk in this market, but I think that those are the two guys that are probably going to be up there via assist leader. I know you mentioned Chris Paul at 15-1 to be assist. For him to at least get assists, being in the system with the Golden State Warriors, whether he's going to be starting or coming off the bench where he can rack up assists that way. I mean, when you have two flamethrowers like Steph Curry and Klay Thompson, if Chris Paul can find those guys, he can rack up the assists there as well. So I think that would be another guy that I would consider at 15-1. But I feel like this category is probably chalk heavy with Hallie and Trae Young at the top there, Chris.
Yeah, no, I absolutely agree. I had Hallie written down as well, plus 210 on FanDuel, plus 205 on DraftKings. The books aren't giving you a discount on Hallie. Finished second last season, like we talked about, just 0.3 behind Harden. And he only played the 56 games due to injury, and we've seen this number just kind of continue to increase every single game. I mentioned it already, but we expect him to be flying up and down the court, playing with a bunch of pace, which are only going to lead to more assist opportunities. Going back to assists, like I talked about, his 19.8 potential assists led the league and was 2 more than any player last year. Pacers finished top 5 in pace last season as well, and 9th in total possessions. And that's what you're looking for. And that was what Halliburton missed in 28 games. So now you add Bruce Brown, you add Obi Toppin, and some of those other guys get a chance to develop like a Ben Mathurin. This offense is going to be fun to watch. First quarter, first half, over.
I agree 110% with that for sure. All right, so that is the assist leader market. Let's get over to rebounding leader for this upcoming season here, Chris. The odds-on favorite right now is going to be, it's a little chalk heavy with Sabonis plus 275, followed by AD at 3-1, Jokic around close to 4-1, Rudy Gobert 4-1, Giannis close to 5-1, and then there's a drop off after that to Steven Adams at 12-1. But anything that kind of excited you in this market?
Yeah, I think so. A little bit of narrative and a little bit of bounce back, is Giannis. Giannis is 6-1 on FanDuel. You can get him at plus 600, plus 475. I think is what I wrote down on DraftKings. Another player I think that just has a lot to prove this season based on how last season ended. We remember the failure talk, right? At the podium to end that season last year. I think he takes that. I think he takes the season very serious, and he reasserts himself as being the most dominant big man in the league in comparison. Because we got to remember, Jokic won Finals MVP last year and MVP and Finals won the Finals MVP, and Embiid won the MVP last year. So now we're talking about big men, right? And Giannis fits in that category. We saw him average 11.8 rebounds per game last season, which was good for third. But he missed 19 games as well due to injury. So he was in and out of the lineup. We saw that all the way through because he ended up missing games in the first round when they lost to the Miami Heat as well. And he finished 6th in rebound chances last season as well. Given his competition for players with the shorter eyes, I like him a lot. Sabonis, like I said, he could potentially be there, but I don't know if he's going to lead the league. You take a look at Anthony Davis. It's actually scarier than Halloween to a 4-year-old to bet on a season-long prop with Anthony Davis's health. So I'm not doing that. And then Rudy Gobert, he doesn't do it for me just because they have guys that can actually rebound the ball as well. When you think about Karl-Anthony Towns, Anthony Edwards, Naz Reid, all of those guys can kind of rebound the ball. Steven Adams, a year older, 10th year, coming off the severe injury. Don't really like him as much in this spot. His number is down from what we've seen it at in the past. And there's also, the narrative, and I won't say narrative, I'll say quote from Jared Jackson Jr. saying that his goal is to be a better rebounder as well. So I didn't really like any of those guys, specifically Steven Adams in that spot, but I didn't like any of those guys. So I think Giannis takes this, take this season serious. If he's going to put the league on display to let them know that he is still, truly one of the best big men in the league and probably the best big man. We saw him dunk on Christian Wood's shot and tag him in it. So he's out for vengeance this year. That was just the beginning, and that was in the preseason.
Yeah, I think it's going to be a big year for Giannis. I mean, like you mentioned, I think it started with what he mentioned at the podium after they were eliminated at the hands of the Miami Heat, right? And I think that he wants to reassert himself as not only one of the best big men in the league, but the best player in the league, right? And I think that now that he has, Damian Lillard there to, I guess, help facilitate that. And I think, Damian Lillard knows going into Milwaukee that it's Giannis's team. And I think that, the offense is still going to start and stop with Giannis out there. So, yeah, I don't hate that at all. I agree about the Giannis one. Again, I just feel like he's going to be one of these top guys there. If you want to go maybe a little further down the odds, I mean, we've seen Clint Capella do it when he was with the Rockets, grabbing those rebounds. Maybe with John Collins out of the picture, that maybe his number does go up a little bit as far as rebounds per game, 12-1. I don't like Rudy Gobert for like everything that you mentioned there. I agree. I used to have Karl Anthony Towns there. He can grab rebounds. Naz Reid, Anthony Edwards is a guy that can get rebounds there as well. So I did consider Clint Capella at 12-1. And nothing really stuck out to me going further down the list, but I think it's either going to be Giannis, Sabonis, like we mentioned, because I did like the over on his rebounds per game. He is the odds-on favorite at plus 275. And again, Anthony Davis last season led the league in rebounds per game as well, even with LeBron being there. So nothing really stuck out to me as far as rebound per game leader. All right, Chris, let's get over to who's going to be the scoring champion, the points per game leader for this upcoming season. Joel Embiid is the odds-on favorite right now, close to 2-1, followed by Luka at plus 255, Shea at 4-1, Giannis plus 550, Jason Tatum plus 750, and then it gets into 10-1 or better. 13-1 is Steph, 14-1 at Dame. Donovan Mitchell, 20-1, LeBron, 35-1, Jordan Poole, 35-1, and then it goes to Zion, Kevin Durant, and Devin Booker, each at 50-1, and then it goes on from there. But Chris, this season, I think last year it was Joel Embiid who led the league in scoring per game at 30.6. LeBron was number 2 at 30.3. And like you mentioned, a lot of that was because Anthony Davis was out and he had to take over the scoring responsibility. So maybe there's a little narrative there for guys that have other superstars on their team and they have to take over that scoring role, maybe if they are going to be out for an extended amount of time. But who do you have your eyes on to be the scoring leader for this upcoming season?
Hey, we're gonna go straight to shooting long shots. Let's go straight to that guy in DC because they don't have anybody else that's gonna be able to score the ball. Give me Jordan Poole. He's actually 40-1, for FanDuel, so you can get him at plus 4,000. We talked about it. New situation, lot to prove for this guy as well. Traded from Golden State, where he had the green light. Now that light turns ultra green. Essentially, his team, him and Kyle Kuzma. I know that he has, like a lot of pride and, just kind of putting his head down and working. He's taken all of the things that he's learned from Steph and Clay and, Draymond as well. And he's thrust into this new role. Last season, he shot 43% on 15.5 shot attempts to average 20.4 points per game. This season, I would not be surprised, if we see him shoot the ball 23 to 24 times per game.
Yeah.
He'd lead the league based on the numbers last season when LeBron actually led the league with 22 shot attempts per game at number 1. So Bron, Luka, Tatum, Dame were the 4 players who took the most shots last season. All 4 players finished in the top 6 in scoring outside of LeBron, who finished 9th. If he can get up those attempts, I think he can actually lead the league in scoring. If you can get this at 40-1, I think I got to put a little something down on him, I looked at the roster as well. They don't, like I said, they don't have a lot of talent outside of Kuzma. Denny Avdia, Corey Kispert, those guys do not move the needle for me at all. So I think Jordan Poole has a pretty big year, If I would put a sprinkle on him to lead the league in scoring.
Yeah, I mean, again, it's a pure shot volume thing that we're talking about here with Jordan Poole, right? I mean, he's going to have the ultimate green light. There's no question about that. And again, like you mentioned, from a roster perspective, and we talked about earlier that, it was Bradley Beal for so many years for that team. It was, Porzingis last year, but those 2 guys are no longer on this roster. And it's Kyle Kuzma show. It's going to be the Jordan Poole show in DC there. So if you're a Wizards fan, buckle up because you're going to see a lot of shots being taken by Jordan Poole, especially at a number. I mean, the books I think are no as well, right? Traditionally, you wouldn't see it. Jordan Poole be a 35-1, have 35-1 odds. That sort of odd for him to lead the league in points per game. But again, from a pure shot volume perspective, I think Jordan Poole, you definitely have to put something down on. I'm gonna look further down the list. I mean, we talked a lot about Trae Young here, Chris. I mean, it's 100-1, and again, it's 100-1. So you got to put something down on Trae Young to be the leader as far as points per game this upcoming season. And I know we talked a lot about him with DeJounte Murray in the fold there as well, but I think he's gonna have a bounce back year this year. The numbers were down last year, like you mentioned earlier in the show, but I think that some of that had to do with stuff going on the court, whether it was an injury, a shoulder injury that he was dealing with, and stuff off the court as well. But I feel like that he's going to be in that Donovan Mitchell role under Quinn Snyder. And I know DeJounte Murray is there as well, but again, for Trae Young, we know that he can get it done from 3-point land. He could get it done from the mid range. He could get it done from inside the paint, but also he can, make free throws as well. And one of the better free throw shooters in the league when it comes to a guy like Trae Young. So at 100-1 for Trae Young, I don't hate that number. I'll throw one out there. I think this one is a little intriguing to me. And I get your thoughts on here as well. Anthony Edwards, 60-1. I think the shot volume has to go up a little bit because he hasn't averaged more than 20 attempts per game in his first, couple seasons here in the league. But I think that from him, what he possibly learned with playing with Team USA over the summer and that translating to the NBA season's upcoming year, we've seen a lot of talk about the work ethic that Anthony Edwards has. And he's come out and said that he's not going to sit games. He's like, the people pay a lot of money to come out and watch the best players in the league play basketball. And if I'm not severely hurt, I'm not going to be sitting games. And, being on a team that I know has Carl Anthony Towns as well as a scorer, but I think for Anthony Edwards, he's just getting better and better every single year that he's in the league. And we've seen him develop his 3-point shot. He can get to the basket at will as well. So for Anthony Edwards, I think for something down at 60-1, I don't hate that number for him.
Probably my favorite young player in the league. If I have nothing bad to ever say about Anthony Edwards, this dude, like you said, we're talking specifically about the prop though. So I'll keep my comments to myself about Anthony Edwards. But if we're talking about the prop, like you said, just going back to what you said in the very beginning, I don't know if he's selfish enough. You kind of got to be selfish to to want to get this prop. And every time to lead the league in scoring, every time you hear Anthony Edwards talk, even when they try to project the conversation to be about him, he just talks about his teammates and how good Karl Anthony Towns is and how he wants Nickeil Alexander-Walker to continue to shoot the ball when he throws it to him and how Rudy Gobert is, fitting into the offense. So I don't know if his mentality, I don't think that's lip service. I think it's real. And I don't know if his mentality will let him score the ball, but they should need him. And he does have the potential, absolutely, to get this done, so I could not talk you off of that one at all. Let me throw one out real quick.
Go ahead.
And going up to back up towards the top. SGA, this dude finished fourth last season. You can get him at 4-1 plus 380 on FanDuel as well. Finished fourth last season, 31.4 points per game, and I think he continues to ascend this year. This will be his 7th year in the league, and one could argue they still hasn't hit his prime yet. And this dude's only 25 years old. You look at OKC, they run a really free-flowing offense that's predicated on ball movement. But when things do break down, SGA is the guy that has the ball in his hands, and he can score, pretty much at all 3 levels. He shot 51% last year from the field. He also shot 90% from the free throw line, and he got to the free throw line 11 times last season. So he's not a 50-40-90 guy, but he's a 90-50 38.5 guy, right? So because he's not going to shoot that many threes. But last season he did take 20 shot attempts from the field. So he kind of, I expect him to live at the line. I do expect him to kind of continue to ascend. And I also love that he, played FIBA basketball. So I know he's in shape to start the season as well. So I don't think SGA would be, I know I gave out a long shot of Jordan Poole, but I think you probably, put a little something on both of those guys.
Yeah, I don't hate it for SGA. Does Chet now being there give you any concern about him maybe taking some shots away from SGA, or do you think that is obviously the offense still runs through SGA, but any concerns about Chet now being involved for this OKC Thunder team?
I thought about that as well, because Chet is going, come in and take his shots. Chet hasn't really moved the needle offensively for me. Like I've been
I think
looking,
it's
kind of
really there
watching
for
OKC.
defensive purposes.
Yeah, like they need him because remember they were a terrible rebounding team last
Yeah.
year. They need a rim protector. Remember the game I always reference is the game they had against Philly. They couldn't stop Embiid, so they doubled him. And B had a triple double because just kept kicking it out. So, they probably won't have to do that this year with Chet being down there. So I think he'll impact the defensive side of the ball a little bit more than the offense. That does give me just a kind of a little bit pause of hesitation, but I think SGA can still get there for sure.
Yeah. One more guy who did want to ask you about before we wrap up this episode. I mean, your guy Anthony Davis at 75-1. I mean, we talked about at the top of the show how for the LA Lakers, I know LeBron is probably going to take a step back as far as the scoring load goes, but I want to see what he averaged last year. Did Anthony Davis for this team? And again, the injury, I know people are going to say, oh, it's an injury concern all the time for Anthony Davis, but I think when he actually on the court, we know that he can score the basketball. But
25.9.
Yeah, but I think for the scoring leader, it has to be 30 plus. But,
absolutely.
And again, it's 30, it's 75-1 for a reason. I'm not sure if he'll sniff close to 30, but I thought that was just an interesting conversation to have for Anthony Davis at 75-1.
Yeah, you gotta have that dog in you, Munaf. I don't know if his bark that big or not. I don't know if his bite that big or not. So yeah, I wouldn't take AD here. He's gotta prove it to me, man. I think I think it's more so one of those guys who have that want to shoot the ball, they really want to score, and it's probably going to be a guard because we know it's a guard-driven league outside of Joel Embiid and Jokic, of course. But traditional, back to the basket play like Anthony Davis doesn't really win too often. Although Joel Embiid did do it last year, I just think on a team with LeBron James, probably won't be necessary for Anthony Davis to average that many points. And we also talked about the other players kind of stepping up as well for the Lakers. So Anthony Davis probably doesn't have to, do as much with LeBron as well. Both of those guys can kind of play, kind of reserve themselves, I think, just a tad bit with the addition of D'Angelo Russell, Rui Hachimura, and AR-15 this year.
All right. Anybody else as far as this scoring leader market for you, Chris?
No. I think a sprinkle on Jordan Poole, and if one that I'm really looking at, like I said, was SGA. Those are the two guys that I like the most. Of course, you can always go Tatum. Like Tatum just going to continue to get better every single year.
Yeah.
I love Tatum. Love him out in Boston as well. So I don't think you could go wrong with Tatum. He shoots the ball pretty much every other time, and they chuck threes. We know the offense that they like to run. If it's not a three, then they might call a timeout and take you out, put you on the bench if you didn't. You shot a 2-pointer. So you never could go wrong with Jason Tatum, and I think he's going to continue to ascend too.
Yeah, I agree. I think again, for Jason Tatum, maybe look at the MVP market for him, because I think again, like you mentioned, he's only going to get better. The Golden State Warriors ambassador is in the building as well. Shout out to KC. Yeah, she's like, yeah, he's not going to meet the game requirements. We can't talk you off of that for sure. Again, being at that the 65 game requirement to qualify for the awards and for the scoring leaders and such, that's definitely going to put a thorn in the side this year for Mr. Anthony Davis. But yeah, I mean, she agrees with everything that we mentioned as well with Titus Jones. As far as him dishing the basketball to Jordan Poole and Kyle Kuzma. So we'll definitely be keeping our eyes on Titus Jones for his assists, at least early in the season. So I think that's something that I'm going to write down for us to keep our eyes on until the market does correct itself for Titus Jones as far as assists go. All right, Chris, that is pretty much going to wrap it up, man. We went through our player props for season long and who we like for leaders, for assists per game, rebounds per game, and scoring champion this upcoming season. Anything else you want to mention, my man, before we get out of here?
Nah, that's it, man. I enjoyed doing this show. It was a lot of fun, kind of diving all the way headfirst back into, the NBA and kind of evaluating some of these markets to see what we like and, see what we love to kind of separate the two. So Looking forward to, doing the show with you moving forward, man. Propcast is going to be jumping on and popping. So make sure y'all hit that like button for me, subscribe, tell your friends to come cash with Chris and Munaf on the Sports Gambling Podcast Network, because we're going to be giving out winners all season and we're excited about it, man. Also, check me out on Twitter or X at Crispy Captain, 2 P's, 2 N's. All my work will be posted there so you guys can follow along as well.
You still going to do your daily show during the regular season there? Chris?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
We'll be on. I got to solidify time, but we will be on and, kind of on and popping, we're going to get it going.
100%. Yeah. I mean, like we mentioned, 4 days away from the season tipping off, and we got a great doubleheader on the opening night. I think we have the Lakers and the Denver Nuggets, and then we have the Phoenix Suns and the Golden State Warriors. So the prime teams in the Western Conference going head to head on opening night of the NBA season. So hopefully those props drop on Monday. I'm hoping for that first game, so me and Chris can do a propcast for opening night, and then we'll figure out a schedule. At least my goal is at least 2 to 3 times per week for the propcast for the regular season NBA, and then we'll also sprinkle in some updates on the future markets, maybe like a Futures Friday episode, maybe like once a month or twice a month. But again, like Chris mentioned, this is a great time right now. If you haven't already subscribed to the propcast, wherever you listen to, it's on Spotify, whether it's on Apple, or if you just want to subscribe to the NBA Gambling Podcast YouTube channel, we're going to be going Monday to Friday for your NBA Gambling Podcast. Chris is going to be part of that team as well. He's going to join me on Thursdays to handicap those games. And again, like I mentioned, for the propcast as well, talking player props and only player props on the propcast. So definitely looking forward to the season. I know the NBA Gambling Podcast crew is excited. And me and Chris are excited for the propcast as well. So come tap in with us. Hopefully we can put some money in your pockets for this upcoming season. All right, we'll be back later this week for the NFL propcast with myself, Chris, and Rod. So look out for that. Till then, good luck with your bets. Let's break these books off and let it ride.